Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever this is episode 252 of the Tree Talk podcast. So much to get through, as always, Matt. We had the final round in most of the hurling championships. The weather caused a bit of chaos, so there's still outstanding fixtures to be played. We know who our quarter finalists are in the senior championship. We're looking forward to them this weekend. We've ladies football to look back on, we've Camogie to look forward to, and we've two special guests joining us straight away. So stay tuned for all that and more.
The impression the game you get out of it, what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Curry. Curry leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Matt, we'll waste no time introducing our guests this morning. We have Liam O'Brien and James Lundon, co-authors of 1973, Keeping the Dream Alive, a book that's coming soon. I presume many of you have heard about it, but it'll chronicle Limerick's 1973 All-Ireland success. Lads, good morning. Thanks very much for coming on.
Good morning, Jack. Good morning, Matt. How are you?
Good.
Morning,
good.
lads. How are you?
Good now.
I suppose for anyone that doesn't know about the book, this is just a cover. So you might have seen it. You might have seen the interviews with the likes of JP McManus and those at I think it was the day of the Cork game when we didn't maybe expect that 4-0 to come to fruition. But talk to us maybe, Liam, about the origin of this book, because for people looking at Limerick hurling at the moment, they mightn't realise that there was a fairly lengthy barren spell in Limerick, and I think the premise of the book is 1973 was so important to, as its title, keep that dream alive.
Yeah, absolutely, Jack. The motive for the book was, I suppose, now in the wake of this last 5 or 6 years of fantastic glory and prestige that this current generation have brought to us, that it's become increasingly obvious that the one All-Ireland we won between 1940, the golden era of the Mackey era in the 30s and 40s, and 2018, the current era, the one All-Ireland we won in the 78 years was in 73. And that's huge. I think, by comparison, if you look at the likes of Cavan and Mayo in football and maybe Waterford in hurling, the gaps that they have probably stretched too long. Whereas with the 73 group, I mean, I wasn't born in 73. I was born a couple of years later. James was alive, but he was too young to remember. But these lads, I remember all of them playing with their clubs. A lot of them played football as well with their clubs. I remember most of them playing with Limerick. And they were still heavily involved socially. Willie Moore was my teacher in Sexton Street. I went to the same primary school in Roxborough as him and Grimes did. I went to school in Sexton Street. All the photos were on the walls. So these guys were still role models and hugely influential figures. And if you think about the likes of Eamon Cregan would have coached so many of the current generation between Mary Immaculate College and the academy as well. The link was still very strong, even though it was 45 years and we all know how long it was and how tough it could be at times. So we felt that in light of the recent success in particular, that we marked the 50th anniversary by remembering this fantastic bunch of players.
Yeah, certainly a fantastic bunch. James, I suppose you had no issues getting on board to look back on what was a pretty incredible year when you consider it does bridge a 78-year gap.
Absolutely, Jack. Liam came to me with the idea last January. I was working on a much larger book, believe it or not, even though this book weighs in at nearly 528 pages. I am still working on a book, which would have been the statistical history of Limerick hurling. So Liam came to me in January and said, would you be interested in doing a book like that? I thought for a while, and then I pretty much had all the tools already at my disposal. I have all the programs, I have all the magazines, I have a lot of newspapers. I had the knowledge already. I had already built up a statistical database of the people who had played before and after 73. So it was a perfect fit, having pretty much all the data I needed at my to hand. The project progressed along with that. Liam has always been the creator of the project. He's the editor, and then we dragged in a great gentleman called Niall Deegan, who has been also a researcher on the project, but also the designer. In this day and age, when you're printing books, you must have a very good designer who is part of the project. And he's done absolutely wonderful wonderful work on the book, as you will see when it is published. The book is absolutely brilliantly designed, brilliantly presented, and will be brilliantly published or printed by Cube.
Yeah, no,
what we did after that was basically we constructed.
Go on, you constructed.
You've seen that.
I have, yeah. No, it's a beautiful book from what I've seen. Liam has obviously sent me the soft copy of it, and I'll just show through pictures here. But Liam, maybe tell us how hard or how easy was it to get these photos? Well, I know James said he has the mega or the programs and things, but must have been a lot of digging to go out and find the likes of these pictures. You see there the first one against Tipperary and Munster, and this is the Munster final, I believe.
That's right, yeah. So Niall thought they would certainly be photographs. If you look at that first image, actually, if you wouldn't mind putting it up again, please, Jack. This was something from the Limerick Leader archive, and it wasn't in great shape. It was in black and white. And as you can see, Niall has restored it brilliantly into a 2-page fold, and subtly and very very stylishly colorized the photo. Now, this is the National Hurling League semi-final replay in Burr between Limerick and Tipperary, which went to a replay. As we all know, Limerick and Tipperary in the first 5 or 6 years of the 70s had a phenomenal rivalry with games just on the edge of a coin, all of them. But we had to dig deep. We got some wonderful photos from Michael Martins in Griffin Street, who gave us some wonderful black and white images from the All-Ireland final. We also got them from the Tipperary Studies in Thurles. They actually had a priest called, I think, Father Kennedy, who took handheld camera colour photographs from the Munster final that were never seen before, not to the public anyway. And we also got it from the Irish Photo Archive, the Limerick Leader, lots of other sources. That wonderful black and white image of the parade from the 1973 Munster final, that one there, yeah. We got that from the Cork Examiner, the Irish Examiner now. A fantastic photo, as you can see there. It just perfectly encapsulates a Munster final in Thurles, and the tension in all the players' faces as well. So definitely the book has many features. It's almost like 2 or 3 books in one, in that you can, through the reportage of the time, read the story of the whole 1972-73 National Hurling League and Championship seasons with the challenge games as well. But also visually, from a visual viewpoint, there's over 350 images in that book, and I would wager most people wouldn't have seen 2/3 of what we have in there.
Yeah, the one image that sticks out for me that you sent is definitely this one, and it's the team basking their glory on the Hogan step, and it's I suppose it puts into context just how long it was from 1973 to 2018 when you see that it's black and white and you see what the people are wearing. But a brilliant photo. I don't know, have you seen this one before, Matt? It's one that definitely stuck out to me.
No, I haven't seen it before, but it certainly is a fantastic photograph that absolutely captures the day. But Jack, before I say anything else, I would like to congratulate the lads on what is a fantastic production. I have seen a soft copy of it, and it is absolutely fantastic. And I have a bit of an advantage over you 3 guys in that I actually lived through every moment of it, dare I say, and was at every one of those matches. And I also lived through the 60s when we had a very, very fallow period. The first time I saw Limerick playing was in 1960 when we got beaten 10-9 to 2-1 in Cork, and I got cried all the way home to Glenroe because for some reason I had expected Limerick to win. But the 60s were a poor decade for Limerick, apart from that landmark victory in 66 when we beat Tipperary, which was a bit of a shock, and Limerick unleashed Eamon Cregan on the unsuspecting hurling world. But I suppose the basis of the start of 73 perhaps was in the league win in 71. When we won the league down in the athletic grounds, it was for the first time in 24 years. We hadn't won the league since 47. And of course, in the 30s, we were the league specialists, winning 5 in a row. And how nice it would be now if we put 5 championships in a row. There'd be a very, very nice pair sitting beside each other as a record. But we won that league in 71. Hopes were high. Munster Championship beat Cork in the semi-final by a couple of points and went on and got beaten in that famous or notorious, whatever way you like to call it, dry ball day in Killarney by Tipperary. And 72 then went out to Clare. So, but at the same time in 72, we got to the league final and were beaten by Cork by a couple of points. 73 got to the league final again, got beaten by Wexford in Croke Park. After having beaten Wexford, mind you, in the group stages in NSD. So, like, you know, Limerick were a bit under the radar, if you like, in 1973 in the championship. There wasn't terrible expectations, having lost to Clare in 72, then beat them in 73, and then beat Tipperary in that famous Munster final with Richie Bennis's last-minute puck, which is similar in many ways to the way we had won the league in 71 with a last-minute puck again from the same Clare. And then we had, of course, while we were beating Tipperary in the Munster final in Thurles and basking in the glow of it, away from there was a big surprise result unfolding in that Lundon were beating Galway in the All-Ireland quarter-final. So that set up a semi-final between Limerick and Lundon, which was played in Ennis. And of course, I suppose the whole game was overshadowed by the fact that here you had Eamon Ray full forward for Limerick and his brother Gray full back for Lundon. Now, it didn't transpire as such, from what I recall on the day in Ennis, that they actually marked each other. But and then we went on to the All-Ireland final, and you had the big narrative going into the All-Ireland final was Eddie Kerr was out, Pat Delaney was doubtful, Kieran Purser was also out. And I suppose to a certain degree, it swung the pendulum in Limerick's favour. But I would contend vehemently to this very day that no matter who was on the field for Black and Amber that day, that Limerick would have won, because they put up such a performance. It was an absolutely memorable day, not in great conditions now, mind you, because I remember returning to my accommodation in Dublin like a drowned rat, but I didn't realise I was wet. Such was the excitement. And like suddenly you were thinking of heralding a new dawn for Limerick, but unfortunately it wasn't to be. Beat Waterford in the Munster Championship the following year, went on and beat Clare comprehensively in the final. And of course, Kilkenny exacted revenge in 74. But during that period, I think we appeared in 4 National League finals in a row. So, like, we were really knocking at the door. We only won 1. We beat Tipperary in the first, lost to Cork in the second, lost to Wexford in the third, and lost to Cork in the fourth. But I think from having read through the soft copy of the book, that the lads have absolutely captured the whole 1973 thing to an absolute T. And I say to them again, lads, well done.
Thank you, Matt.
There's a memory there. There's a summary of the book there from Matt.
Thanks for your kind words, Matt. Much appreciated.
Was there anything, lads, in your research that surprised you maybe, or you didn't know? Because I know you're heavily invested in Limerick hurling, but it is so long ago. It's completely different, generation, time, no phones or anything like that. Was there anything that stuck out for me in the research creating the book?
James actually found out an interesting fact about Jackie Power, didn't you, James? That many people might know about his role, what his official role was.
In the old days, guys, as Matt will remember, you had the idea of selectors, but you didn't have technically a manager like we do today. You had 5 selectors. You had there was a very interesting commission set up in 1971 by some very eminent people within Limerick to ask the questions to why we'd been unsuccessful the previous 30 years, the period from 1940 to 1971. And they came up with a very prescient report regarding preparation of teams, regarding championship structures, regarding selectors. And one of them was about having a much smaller number of selectors and perhaps having a manager. So by the time 1973 came along, especially after the aftermath of 1972 and the debacle in Clare, they brought the county board convention at the time elected the selectors, very much unlike today. So, 1973 was very much a different time and place, but that had been the structure of how county teams had both been constructed and selected up to that stage. Jackie Power and Dick Stokes were the sort of the dream pair, somewhat similar to the current John Kiley, Paul Kinnerk, the brains and the beauty, or the beauty and the brains, whichever way you'd like to phrase it. And then there was a selector from each of the 3 other divisions, Sean Cunningham, Dennis Barrett, Jim Quaid. So it was a group of 5. But Jackie Power was elected by the selectors as team manager. Now, team manager at that time was very much only a term. It didn't really count. Ultimately, the team was managed and selected by these 5 selectors. And there was only really 2 other people involved in the preparation of the team in 73, which was Mick Cregan, Eamon's brother, Eamon's slightly older brother by over a year, and a gentleman called Vincent O'Connor, who was the masseur, and he also acted as a makeshift medic. So really, at the time, there was only 7 people involved in the sideline in Limerick, those 7 people. Jackie, at that time, had already immigrated down to Tralee and was deeply involved with Austin Stacks. And that very year, Jackie Power managed or trained the Austin Stacks team to their first county senior football championship since, I believe, 1937. So that connection between Austin Stacks and Limerick hurling has been very strong, very much since then. I spoke to people down in Austin Stacks who still very much remember the impact that Jackie and his sons, obviously, afterwards had on that club, both in football and in hurling terms. And so much so that in 1989, the remnants of the 1973 hurling team went down and played an All-Stars, a Kerry All-Stars team for the opening of the Austin Stacks pavilion, or the Austin Stacks clubhouse in 89. And it's the last time that we can figure out whether that 1973 team played together was in that game in 1989. And I do believe that game was pretty well contested, because I recall Eamon Grimes saying to me that he felt very, very, very bruised after it, because he was playing with a couple of lads from Kerry who had no sympathy for the Limerick lads coming down for the weekend.
I'm sure there's plenty of snippets and stories like that of Jackie Power throughout the book. Lads, before we finish there, Liam, just for anyone that wants to buy the book, again, I'll just try to cover up for anyone that may have seen it. How would they go about it? I know it's pre-sale at the moment.
Well, I'll tell you about the launch in November, and James can give you details because James is dealing with the orders for the moment. So we have a launch planned for the 5th of November at the Woodlands House Hotel in Adair. We hope that most of the 73 team will be there, and the mayor will be there, and ourselves, of course. 5th of November, it's a Sunday at 6 o'clock, and it's just a chance to celebrate and remember these wonderful, wonderful players that give so much to their county and continue to do so in terms of role models and stuff as well, because we've had the pleasure of getting to know these guys over the last 8 or 9 months, and they really are top class men, and we really are so lucky to have them with us, Before I hand over to James to finish up, just like to thank again our colleague Niall. He couldn't be with us this morning with work, but Niall, you'll see his work with the graphic design, with the images, fantastic work. So James will give you the order details now.
Thank you. Just before I go into the order details, guys, I'll just tell you 2 other things from 73. Just to add what Matt said, we have 2 photographs of Jerry and Eamon Ray in direct competition with each other. So Eamon did start in corner forward, but he wasn't going well in corner forward, and he was moved in on top of his brother. And there are two very grainy newspaper images from the game where the two guys, number 3 of Lundon, who incidentally played in white that day because the two teams usually play in green, and they both had to switch. So London switched to the Kildare. London had a set of Kildare football jerseys, which they switched to, and Limerick switched to the blue of Munster GA. And there are two pictures of them in direct competition, number 3 white and number 14 green. The other thing is, I want to say clearly, is to a large number of the younger people who will be reading this book, who would have very little knowledge of 1973, the key incident in the year really was the 70 from Richie at the end of the Munster final. And having spoken to the referee, who's still very much alive, Michael Slattery, outside Clarecastle, he is absolutely adamant that the ball was clearly between the posts and over the bar, and that any question mark about it from any other source is wrong. The ball was over the bar. It was a score. We won the Munster final. End of story. As to how you can pre-order, there is an email address, 1973 Limerick Book, all one word, 1973 Limerick Book @gmail.com. You send me an email and I will send you on the pre-order details, which we would much prefer if you paid by either Revolut or PayPal. By pre-ordering, you are guaranteed an advanced copy of the book pre-launch. The book is going to be nearly 2.5 kilos in total weight. It is a very large book. It is both, as Liam said, a coffee table, but also the definitive history of that year. And as Matt has already said, haven't seen a soft copy. We don't go straight into 1973. We talk about the years before 73. We talk about the minor successes, the college's successes of the mid-60s. We talk about the 5 league finals. We actually played 5 league finals in a row between 1970 and 74. We speak specifically about the Munster final of 71 and the league final of 71. We even won an Oireachtas in late 71, which was a very big deal for the players. 72, the debacle in Ennis. We speak about the 10 games we played in the league in 72-3. We speak about the league final on Froshy McGrahm breaking his leg. We speak about the 4 games, Clare in June, Tipper in July, London in August, and Dublin in September. And then we talk about the aftermath. We talk about the year after, and a few different events that happened, the All-Stars, the trip to the States. And we also have a full statistical record of both the league and championship of that year. So every single man who played for Limerick that year is mentioned in the book. There are action shots of most of the players that played in 73. And we've thrown in a lot of what we call side stories, sidebars, just interesting snippets from the time that was both on and off the field, in and around Limerick and nationally. So I feel that it will act both as the definitive history of 73, but also that you can just open up the book and just watch and look at the pictures. And I think people will get an idea of the year that was just by looking at the pictures. We also have a small website, 1973limerickbook.wordpress.com, where we are posting material which didn't get into the book or didn't fit into the book. And also you can contact the authors or contact the pre-order facility using that website. So 1973limerickbook@wordpress.com, 1973limerickbook@gmail.com.
Lovely. Thank you very much, sir, for the kind of flow down there.
Congratulations again to the lads. But James, you might tell us, there are 2 very worthy charities set to benefit from the proceeds of the book.
Correct. So what's going to happen, Matt? Thank you very much for that. The net profits. This is a totally voluntary project from our part. This is a labour of love. This is our way of giving back to both to the players of 73, but also to Limerick GA in general, and that we got the energy purely from, or mostly from, the success of the current year, that we were down for so long that only the winners seem to ever write the history, and we were almost perennial losers. But that has changed, and the worm has turned, and now we can start writing our history. And all of us are now 2 inches taller for the last 5, 6, 7 years of success of the current wonderful team. But also it gives us the energy to write about our past as well. And this is the perfect opportunity to do that. The 2 charities are the Children's Ark in University Hospital Limerick, and also the local chapter of the Society of Vincent de Paul in Limerick. So the net profits from the book will be split down the middle between those two charities. So the more books we sell, the more money we'll be able to give to those two charities down the line.
Brilliant.
And we felt that a locally produced book about locally produced heroes, people, local charities should benefit from that, and that was the mantra. So thanks very much, everybody, for your support, and buy our book. You won't be disappointed.
No, I
and come to the launch.
Yeah, but definitely come to the launch. But it's definitely one for as we get closer to Christmas, and it's very early to say the C word, but it's definitely something that over Christmas I'll have plenty of time to read about as we gear up for a potential 5 in a row. But we won't get ahead of ourselves. We'll remember the heroes in 1973 that, as you said, kept the dream alive. James, Liam, thanks very much for your time.
Hope the 5th, lads. Thanks very much for your time and support.
Perfect, lads.
Thanks
we'll talk again
lads.
soon. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye. Now, that was Liam O'Brien and James Lundon telling us about the 19th century keeping the dream alive.
I just want to say, I want to congratulate the lads again, because, as I say, I have the distinct advantage of having lived through it. And if ever a book captured what happened in a particular, a particular event, and the event being that we won the Munster and All-Ireland Championship, and, this really captures it. And like they set out the genesis of it. We saw the success in 71. That was the immediate sign that something was happening. But as James referenced there at the end, you had the success of Limerick CBS in the 60s, like winning the Harty Cup on a regular basis. Very much like Ardskull Reach now and winning the Croke Cup, the way Ardskull is feeding into it, and that, produced some great players like Eamon Cregan and Eamon Grimes and those. And you also had Limerick contesting 2 minor finals in the 60s. Like, whilst the period of the 60s may have been fallow at senior level, we contested the 63 final, and we were beaten by Wexford in what I think is the highest scoring All-Ireland minor final ever. I think we scored something like 418 or something and lost the final. And then we were beaten in the 65 final. We were beaten by Dublin in the 65 minor final. So, like, they would possibly have been the green shoots, but the 71 was probably the catalyst. But like, the whole thing is captured so graphically, so accurately. I have the advantage of seeing a soft copy of it, and like I would say to people, it's an absolutely compelling read. It's a compelling book to have, for the simple reason for the read copy quality, and also the photographs. As Liam O'Brien said, they are 2/3 of which he reckons have never been seen. And like they were certainly new to me anyway. And as somebody that lived through it, and as somebody that devoured newspapers all my life, but particularly after winning an All-Ireland, the first in my lifetime, you just, Jack, you would have to live through it to believe how they've captured it. That struck me from the very first chapter. Like, the painstaking research that has gone into it is simply phenomenal. And like, and as James Lundon said there, it was done on a voluntary basis. And to think, that the sweat of their brows on this production, like, is going to benefit 2 great charities. So like, it's just wonderful. And it's look, for any GA fan in Limerick, Jack, it's a keepsake. It is a special keepsake. And it, as I said, whether you lived through it or you didn't, it absolutely captures to the T what happened that year and how it was brought about. Absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, no, brilliant undertaking by the lads there, and it's not the first time they've combined forces for a book that we talked about, Illustrated Tales. The Terraces one that that was for All-Ireland final, I think, in 2021. So there's plenty of good books from the lads, and I'm sure this will be no different, Matt. But talking of hurling, it was a very busy weekend in the championships. Now we have some outstanding games, as I said at the start, due to weather. We concluded the senior championship outright over the weekend. Now there was so much games to go through. We might just take an overview of certain games. Finishes with the PIHC beat Kilmallock to top the group. Kilmallock had already into the semi-finals. Patrickswell beat KP, who were already relegated. Patrickswell finished fourth, and Doon beat Ahan in one of the bigger games. That means Doon will finish third because of the win, and Ahan are out. Just briefly on the top six, I know you were at Doon versus Ahan. I think overall, probably would feel there's a missed opportunity, but Doon are keep trucking away even without all those players missing, and they're into quarter-final, and you'll be, they're a dangerous opposition now. They've had two heavy beatings, but they've won their other three games fairly tight, and you wouldn't want to play them in the quarter-final, which Mungret will. But just overall, the final standings in Group 1, what do you make of it?
Yeah, I suppose very predictable. It's the 7th year in a row, I think, that we've had the same four, if I'm right.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
I was at the Doon Ahan game. Jack, it was a disappointing game. You know, there's no sugarcoating of it in terms of hurling. But I suppose, you know, Ahan came in with a realistic chance of lowering Doon's colours, but it didn't happen. And like, with Doon ahead by a goal at half-time, having played with whatever breeze there was, and Ahan to get the first 2 points of the second half, you said, hey, presto, this is going to be a cracker. Now, the quality of the hurling in the first half was poor because I think the tension over sort of, you know, superseded everything because the stakes were were so high. And, but no, Doon dug in, and like, Jack, I cannot for 1 minute hide my admiration for Doon. I just can't, because I was just checking the records only yesterday. Like, the 6 defenders that Doon had in last year's concluding stages of the championship, and let's name them: Mikey O'Brien, Tom Hayes, Chris Thomas, Patrick Cummins, Richie English, Josh Ryan. They're without them all. They've had to rebuild their defence, you know, and as the competition has gone on, they're getting better at improvising. Cormac Ryan has gone back, cornerback is very, very solid there. Owen Fitzgibbon has a new lease of life. Eddie Stokes moved to centre-back against Ahan, I thought was outstanding, as was Darragh O'Donovan in the previous game. So they're improvising, but they have an attack, Jack, that is very, very sharp, because you have Adam English, who plays at midfield. You know, you have Barry Murphy, who's coming back right to form. You have Pat Ryan, who's playing well. And you have Dara Stapleton, you know, providing fantastic experience. Got a very good goal at the end that sealed the deal. And then you have the like of Kevin Maher and Donald Coughlin. Like Doon are still a formidable force. As I said from the outset, Jack, when they beat Patrickswell, the one message that we got from Doon, and I had seen them winning the league, and they were down 8 or 9 players that time, but actually, you know, we haven't spoken about Dean Coleman either, who's out as well, who's gone abroad.
Yeah.
But about the strength and depth that they have, like, you know, if you have a team that's going to be without 6 players, if they're spread over the field, like if you couple of defenders out, couple of attackers out, maybe a midfielder out, you have a better chance of carrying it. But when your 6 defenders are out, it's just unreal. It's hard to comprehend, and they're still surviving. They have won 3 games, and I'd be very, very slow to bet against them getting to the semi-final, and who knows after that. But it was a disappointing game. I'd say from both sides' point of view, it was a question of getting the job done, and Doon succeeded in doing that. Now, I'm only on hearsay from the other 2 games, but I think I'm right in what I'm hearing, that neither the PIHC nor Kilmallock used the sub.
Yeah, I saw that, all right.
which must be a record. So you just wonder what's that all about, you know. So look, I'd say there was a bit of shadow boxing in that one, because both will have eyes of probably meeting, you know, further down in the competition. But, you know, there's other stuff going to have a say in that. And for Patrickswell, from a Patrickswell point of view, Jack, it was a question of just getting the job done. Now, fair play to Kildare Palace Kenry, they put it up to him for 40 minutes.
Yeah,
you know, and you know, gave him a few scary moments, but you know, they eventually got the job done. But if you permit me, Jack, I would just like to revert to section 2, because all the real action was there, and like, you know, I headed for a day on Thursday night for the final round game between South Liberties and Garryspillane, which was a de facto relegation battle.
Yeah.
Jack, I just couldn't believe what was unfolding. I was in commentary with John Keogh. I just couldn't believe what was unfolding in front of our eyes. Like we had Liberties who couldn't buy a win, who were goal shy, and they hit 7 goals. And 5 of them, Jack, of very, very good quality. And of course, the big news before the game was the return of Anthony Nash.
Yeah.
You know, who made a big difference. And like, Jack, when you're in the trenches, and, you know, we've said in the past that relegation finals take on a life of their own. And by God, did this one take on a life of their own, because Garryspillane would have been favourites coming into it. They were 1 point better off. They had drawn with Mungret St. Paul's. So, you know, they had to get credit for having something, you know. But when you're in a situation that both of those teams were in, you need to have your big players stand up. And by God, did Barry Nash, Anthony Nash, I mentioned him, Barry Nash and Tom Ryan in particular, my God, did they put on some display. Barry Cooney was very, very effective in the forwards. But what they did was, Jack, they inspired a great team performance. They lifted everybody with them from 1 to 15. And you were asking yourself as the game progressed, you know, you'd be pinching yourself and you're saying, hey, how are South Liberties in this position? But now, having said that, Garryspillane got no semblance of rhythm going at all. Like, you know, their whole challenge, you know, felt like a house of cards. You know, they were disappointing in so many aspects of the game. Their defense was run ragged, and it was worrying from Garryspillane right from the start, because Liberties got an early goal from Tom Ryan, and midway through the half, Callum Sheehan got a very good goal for Garryspillane, and the sides were level. But after that, Jack, it unleashed a reservoir of inspiration into South Liberties, and they drove on and had 4 goals on the board at half time and were 8 points clear or something like that. And disappointing game, and that was one-sided. But Liberties played some very, very nice hurling, you know, and talk of keeping the good wine for last, Jack. You know, a team that was goal shy in the first 4 rounds, you know, here they come up with 7. I think that was no other club has come up with 7 goals in a championship game in this year. I think I'm correct in that, in the senior championship.
Yeah, no, it was fine for the Liberties.
You were with me. You were with me as I was recovering from a fall in the Clahan soil, which you were laughing at. I
asked to be okay first, and then I started laughing.
Yeah,
awful conditions.
And didn't stop for most of the match, actually. But I'll forgive you for that, Jack. But like I thought, in my view, the conditions were monsoon, Jack, for Ballybrown and Mungret St. Paul's. And I think those 2 teams defied it. They absolutely defied it. Because there was quite a bit of quality hurling in that game, Jack, despite the conditions. And certainly most of the quality in the first half came from Ballybrown. Now, who had
definitely.
the advantage of a breeze, and it reflected on a 6 points a half-time lead, like, which could have been narrower had Mungret St. Paul's shooting not left them down to a certain degree on a few occasions in the first half. But about 10 minutes into the second half, it was like you turn on a switch. The Mungret rhythm started. And I thought Mungret in the last 20 minutes now, they emerged winners by 3 points. I thought they were very, very worthy winners with the way they finished the game. And they played some very, very good hurling. Now, you've been eulogizing Mungret here for most of this campaign, and I hadn't seen him until the other day, but Jack, I was quite impressed with him. Quite impressed.
Yeah.
Now, they are youthful. They are youthful, but again, they're big players, and you talk about big players in situations like this, and you had Patrick Begley, who was absolutely immense. And what about Liam Lynch? A goal and 12 points. You know,
I saw when it really changed for me for the Mungret that this was, because I'd heard from, like, I have friends in Mungret obviously, and they said they had a team coming, and I saw them in 2021. They played Maru Boher in the first round of the Premier Intermediate Championship. I'm fairly sure it was Liam Lynch's debut at that level. I don't think he would have been eligible before that. And I was thinking, there's a right team coming, like, and that's only 2 years ago, really. But they have so many quality players. Like, Barry Duff has been phenomenally good this year from his brother Rory midfield with him as well. Like, you know, they're a formidable duo, forwards, defensive unit. They're a really balanced side. They're not reliant on any one player that, you know, certain teams can be in the senior championship. I just thought at the start of the year, I thought they'd get up, or I thought they'd get out of the group in the quarters. I wasn't sure they win promotion, but thoroughly deserved it over the course of the year. And you kind of mentioned them getting into a rhythm. They did that against Monaghan in the previous round, and I thought if they could do it again against Ballybrown, they'd have enough, and they did have enough. And I think they were fairly comfortable down the stretch, even though it was only 3 points. I don't think Conor Bryan had a save to make, and I mean, there's more players coming there. They will be formidable, and we'll get into it now, Matt, because they're into.
Yeah, Jack. Just on that, and this, you're right there. Your analysis is right. They saw out the game very, very comfortably. Like in the last 6 or 7, they took the lead in the 54th minute for the first time, I think, wasn't it? With Liam Lynch's goal, and like. From that point on, I didn't see where the kick was going to come from Ballybrown to rescue it.
Yeah, Mungret just kind of, the defence was very solid throughout. I think Ballybrown were extremely accurate in the first half, but once Mungret kind of tightened up a small back there, I don't think they ever looked like conceding a goal. And Mungret missed a couple of chances. Well, Josh O'Reilly made a couple of very good saves, and Paul O'Brien had a good chance as well for a goal that I suppose O'Reilly did well to kind of show him down the line. But a deserving win for Mungret, and now they have the chance to play Doon.
I suppose, Jack, before we go on to the quarterfinals, we must give a shout out for Adair. They missed out on getting to the quarterfinals by 2 points, and I suppose Ballybrown were in similar circumstances. I think 12 months ago when they just missed out on scoring difference as well. It's hard to take now. They looked as if they were getting the job done. They needed a 12-point turnaround.
Yeah.
And when Ronan Lyons came up with the goal in injury, or Larkin Lyons came up with the goal in injury time, you know, it was just heartbreaking for Adair, because, you know, instead of getting a 12-point turnaround, they won the match by 7. They only got a 10-point turnaround. So they missed out on the quarterfinals by two bare points. So, you know, it's not a nice way to go out of the competition. You know, not a nice way not to have another chance. But, you know, I have no doubt. You know, they will come back stronger. But overall, Jack, I suppose, you know, Group A predictable. Group B less so, because I certainly thought that Ballybrown and Adair were the teams most likely. I hadn't seen the surge coming from Mungret. But you know, I thought that there were some very good games in Section B, but it sort of fizzled out a bit, and there was probably less riding in it in the last round than there was in the other in Section A. But look, overall, a decent championship. I wouldn't be shouting to high heavens about it, but a decent championship. And like we hope now that from next Sunday on that the championship will really catch fire, because it needs to be ignited at this stage.
Yeah, it was a good championship. There was some really, really good games, and then there was kind of some games that were very poor to watch. Like I'm talking about the PIHC Patrickswell. One of the first games we had was a brilliant game, and Kilmallock versus Patrickswell was similarly good. Ballybrown and Mungret the other day was very exciting as well. Ballybrown and Adair was exciting. Mungret and Adair was exciting. The games in the top teams did kind of deliver, but yeah, there was some kind of dead rubber games. But as you mentioned, Sunday we're into the quarterfinals, Matt. We have our 6 teams remaining in the hunt for the Daily Cup. Doubleheader on Sunday. We're back in the 2 Scale of Crowns. Both games streamed live by Limerick SHC. I'll leave the link to watch that in the description below. But we have Doon versus Mungret St. Paul's and Ballybrown versus Patrickswell. Starting with Doon versus Mungret St. Paul's. Mungret are coming into the game on the crest of a wave. They're the only team undefeated in the senior championship. 4 wins and 1 draw. Doon have 3 wins, but 2 heavy losses. As you said, without their first choice back 6. Like, there's a real opportunity here for Mungret to take a scalp. So, how do you see this one playing out? I'll get your prediction in a minute, but just on the game itself, Matt, because you could look at it either way. Like, Mungret could easily be seen as favourites, or you could have Doon as your perennial favourites that they get to the semi-final nearly every year.
Jack, what I'm seeing is a Doon team with the capacity to get the job done when necessary. They suffered a very heavy defeat to Kilmallock in the first round, bounced back 7 days later and beat Patrickswell, who had beaten the PIHC in the first round. Then they suffered that awful heavy defeat to the PIHC in round 3 and bounced back 5 days later, just 5 days later, Jack, and beat Kildimo-Pallaskenry. And like, Doon's backs have been to the wall in every game this year, because their backs were to the wall last Saturday when they went to Cappamore to play a hand, lose the match, and they were out. Like, despite those 2 heavy defeats, the last thing Doon will want will be those 2 results to define their season. And I think Doon are going to be quite formidable on Sunday when they get into the Gaelic grounds, and they have experience of it there. They have experience of what it takes to win quarterfinals. Now, having said that, I was very impressed with Mungret St. Paul's. They have a youthful team that is coming along very, very nicely. But I just wonder, are they far down the road enough in terms of development to take on a seasoned team like Doon? I'm not so sure. Now, a lot will depend on we lauded the Mungret backs there a while ago, how they saw out the game. But they will have to step up a level when your fellas like Adam English, Barry Murphy, Pat Ryan and those around the place. Big threat now. Aidan O'Connor was a huge threat for Ballybrown.
Yeah.
But I think at this stage of their development, fantastic to get to the quarter final. And of course, they will be looking at the template of what South Liberties did last year when they became the first team from Section B to beat a Section A team in the knockout stages of the championship. So they will be taking heart from that. But I think Doon are overall so well seasoned. I think their defence has been restructured. It hasn't been restructured. This has been rebuilt from the ground.
Yeah.
And I think that they have the greater scoring threat in that they have more players that can possibly hurt you than Mungret. Now, Mungret are going to make it awfully, awfully difficult for Doon. There is no question about that. But I have a feeling that at their stage of development, at this stage of their development, that it just might be a bridge too far for Mungret.
Yeah, it is. It is extremely early in their development. As we saw, they're only 2 years out of Premier Intermediate. But on a normal day, if Doon had their first Chess 15, there's a high possibility they wouldn't even be in a quarter; they'd be in a semi. But I just think there's a huge opportunity there for Mungret, and I think they have really good defenders that can try and keep a hold of those exceptional Doon players. I think Adam English has been phenomenal this year for Doon. But I have a slight feeling for Mungret that they can make hay while they have a chance against a really depleted Doon side. It's also, they're going to play again next year, regardless now, because they're in Group 1. So they'll want to lay down that marker. And I think they definitely can win. Doon will be favourites, but I've backed Mungret every game this year, and they've only let me down once, and that was the draw against Carrick-Spillane. So before we get into predictions, Matt, we'll just see where we are at the moment. So this is how we went last week. You got further ahead. I backed Kilmallock and 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 𝘔𝘦𝘯𝘴 𝘔𝘦𝘠. You had that. Both had Patrickswell. Both had a dare. We both had Carrick-Spillane to come good and secure safety with South Liberties won that game. I had Mungret and you had Doon. So you're gone 4 points ahead, or 5 points ahead of me there again. But to get into this weekend's predictions, Matt, starting with that first one, Doon versus Mungret St. Paul's, I think you're edging towards Doon.
I'm edging for Doon by 2 points because, as I say, I've seen Doon at least 3 times, Jack, in the championship, and I'm certain I saw the disappointing game against the 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴, but I'm absolutely in awe of their resilience, you know, I think that it will come to, I won't say their rescue, but will come to their assistance again next Sunday in the Gaelic grounds, and I think they'll win the game by about 2 points.
Yeah, it's bad to back against Doon after resilience, as you said, they've shown this year. But I'm going to go with Mungret by 2 points. But I think it'll be a cracking game on Limerick TV this Sunday at 2 o'clock. And then equally so, we've the intriguing battle of neighbours, Ballybrown versus Patrickswell at 4 o'clock on Sunday. Expecting a really, really tough battle here. You know, clashing with neighbours will always bring that. It's repeated the 2016 final. Patrickswell are probably seem to be a bit further ahead than Ballybrown. I think it's fair at this stage. Ballybrown missed out on promotion, and they'll be really eager to bounce back from the disappointment of losing to Mungret as they play another neighbour in Patrickswell. And I'm expecting fireworks here, and I don't think it'll be very one-sided. I think Ballybrown will play their part in this game.
They will, of course. It's not just a battle of neighbours, Jack. It's a battle of parishioners.
Yeah.
The two ends of the parish. It's a parish derby as distinct from a local derby. And of course, they, you know, Doon, for Ballybrown anyway, they won't have forgotten the 2016 county final when they met and when they were overwhelmed by Patrickswell. Patrickswell likewise won't have forgotten being overturned by South Liberties at the same stage of the competition last year. And they will want to ensure that there is no repeat of that. You know, in fairness, Jack, Patrickswell to a certain degree have blown hot and cold in this championship. You know, just for the viewers to say, like, they started off with a win against the 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 in the first round, which was deserved. You were doing commentary on it.
Yeah.
In 7 days later, their colours were lowered by depleted Doon. Then they beat a Han. And then they lost to Kilmallock in what was a classic. Without question, the best game of the championship. And like they were troubled for 40 minutes by Kildimo Pallaskenry, who were already predestined to relegation last weekend. So would the real Patrickswell stand up? But Jack, if you can boast among your ranks players of the calibre of Hurler of the Year Dermot Burns, 2-time Hurler of the Year Keane Lynch, and dare I say Hurler of the Year elect Aaron Gillan.
Yeah.
Like, you have the foundation of a very, very strong side. And of course, they're not all totally dependent on him, because they have some players, the like of Mark Camogie, who's vastly experienced, and you have Jack Kelleher, and you have the O'Briens, and you John Flynn, all these guys like who have a certain amount of experience. You have Jason Gillan, a very, very, very good goalkeeper. So Patrick Swell, they're not leading the Roll of Honour for fun. And like when you think of their championship record, Jack, they lead the Limerick Roll of Honour, and they didn't win the Limerick Senior Championship for the first time until 1965. So in 58 years, they've won the Limerick Championship 21 times, I think. 20 or 21 times. 20 times.
21, I think, yeah.
Or 21. Simply phenomenal. And that is a huge tradition, and it's going to play into it, Now, I saw Ballybrown a couple of times this year, including last Sunday. I saw them in their win over Garrispillane. Now, they beat Garrispillane by 5 points, but it was a very, very comfortable 5 points lead. They conceded a goal and 2 points. 2 points in injury time that day, and I was just saying to myself, coming home from Limerick on Sunday, that very well could have come back to haunt them in the scoring difference.
Yeah,
there was a bit of a switch off. So like
that's what happened. That's how it got out.
Yeah, you think you talk about the importance of playing out till the final whistle, and I think that's a classic example of it. There are a lot of good things I like about Ballybrown, Jack. I saw him in the winning the Premier Under-21 Hurling Championship last year, and a good few of those players are coming through, And Josh Adams back with him is a big, big boost. Josh O'Reilly is an excellent goalkeeper.
Yeah, really good.
If you needed any further evidence of that, then last Sunday, we certainly got it. Nathan O'Connor is absolutely in flying form, and Andy Cliff, like Harry Gleeson and his management team have molded a decent team together. And the fact that they didn't get promoted this year may not be the worst thing that ever happened to them. They could come back stronger from it. I think they possibly will. I think they will put up a very, very good show against Patrick Swell. But I'm going for Patrick Swell. I think Patrick Swell, with the experience, and of course, you'd say with parish rivalry and such close rivalry that form goes out the window. It certainly didn't go out the window in 2016, So I don't think Patrick Swell are going to slip up at the quarterfinal for a second year in a row. So I'm going for Patrick Swell to win by 4 points, Jack.
Patrick Swell by 4. I have the Well by 5. I just think it'll be hard for Ballybrown to regroup after losing their final round game. Patrick Swell are coming in after winning. They could have finished second if Kilmallock had done them a favour. They're going well. They've obviously had those 2 defeats, but that was I think they were shocked by doing, and then a classic with Kilmallock could have gone either way. They have those 300 years, all the players you mentioned. They have some formidable players. I just think Patrick Swell will be too strong for their fellow parishioners this Sunday at 4 o'clock. Again, both those games are on Limerick JTV, and they're two we definitely
I take it you're going for Mungret, Jack, are you?
Yeah, I'm Mungret by 2 and Patrick Swell by 5.
Right.
Is how I see those quarterfinals playing out. Very quickly, Matt, because I know we've an hour up on the board already. The Premier Intermediate Championship, Matt, we're going into the final round. So I might just get your predictions for that final round. I'll show you the table as we stand. FN are through. They beat Bruff to go through their first team into the semi-finals. Then we have 4 on 8 points, with 3 can join FN. The PIHC, Glenroe and Capmore have been eliminated from the championship. For my reckoning, Capmore are out because they lost to Glenroe. Now, I read somewhere that they need Glenroe to lose, and if they go level in points, but I think the head-to-head will go there. So, to confirm, Capmore have been relegated, Matt?
No, I can't confirm it, Jack. Unfortunately, I can't confirm it. No, all I can say is that it's between Glenroe and Cappamore for the dubious honour.
But I thought head-to-head would see Glenroe have that advantage even if Cappamore won in the final round.
I was of the same opinion, but there seems to be some doubt about it.
Okay, so we'll leave that as is. We just know that Pierce, Glenroe and Cappamore can't get into the semi-finals. We've F and through already, and then you have 3 from Drumnatlacha, Newcastle West, Bruff, and Blackrock to join them. Briefly, Matt.
You're asking me which 3 of the 4 will come through, and have you till about 6 o'clock? Because there are so many permutations.
I have 2 minutes for you, but I will ask you to predict the games if you don't mind, because you just have 2, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes. But there are so many permutations, especially with the new rule that if 3 teams finish on level of points, it's points between those teams. So, but briefly on F and Matt, were you impressed with them on Saturday evening?
Didn't see the game,
okay.
But I spoke to a lot of people about the game, and look. The narrative about Effin this year, Jack, has been totally consistent and positive. And 5 wins out of 6, I think bears that out. I think that spells it out. The only defeat was to Drumnatlacha. And no matter, I don't think any club since the formation of that competition in 2014 has gone through unbeaten. And
KP.
Not even Monaghan, who won the All-Ireland, can I remind you, Jack, were beaten in round 2 by Glenroe.
I don't think Kildare and Pallaskenry were beaten the year they won it. I don't think. I'm not sure. Or else they weren't beaten till the final when they lost to Blackrock. There was definitely 1 year KP. But yeah, look, it's a phenomenal competition. We always say it. And to have 4 teams level on points in joint second going into the 7th round tells you all you need to know. But the 4 games we have are Napirsig versus Drumnatlacha. So Atlacha need a win there. Glenroe versus Blackrock. Blackrock are the ones that need the win. Cappamore and Effin, with Effin already through. Cappamore need a win. We think that could might keep him safe. And then it's Bruff versus Newcastle West is the 1 game where you have 2 teams level on points. Now, you'd imagine if you have a winner in Bruff, Newcastle West, it's a straight opportunity for Drumnatlacha and Blackrock. If they win their game, they'll all go on to 10 points and then leave the loser of Bruff and Newcastle West on 8. So I think it'll be fairly straight through.
That's exactly. But where the little complication comes in is if Newcastle West and Bruff draw.
Yes, or else.
Or if there's a draw in one of the other games.
Or if Drumnatlacha and Blackrock lose and there's a winner in the Newcastle game, you will have 3 teams on 8 points. So it's a lot to get into. It'll be a really interesting round. All those games are this Sunday afternoon. I'll just ask you, Matt, for the 4 winners. I'll give you the game and you might just tell me who you think. Now, you haven't had time to think about this, but the Napirsig versus Drumnatlacha. Do you think Drumnatlacha will do their part?
Yeah, I've seen Drumnatlacha playing and I'm impressed by him. Their record is decent. I think Drumnatlacha will win that one.
I'll go for exact predictions here now.
You want this is part of our head-to-head, is it?
I will. Just really have 2 games, so if you don't mind.
Yeah, I'll go with Drumnatlacha by 5.
By 5. I'm going Drumnatlacha by 4. Glenroe and Blackrock.
I'm going Blackrock by 4.
By 4. So I'm going to go Blackrock by 5. If those come true, if Drumnatlacha and Blackrock win, all they need is a winner in the Bruff Newcastle game, and they'll be true. Then you have Cappamore versus Effin.
I'm going Effin by 6.
By 6, which would relegate Cappamore regardless of what happens elsewhere. I'm going to go Effin plus 7. And then the big one of the round, Bruff and Newcastle West, both on 8 points.
Jack, just to give you a bit of a background, if you will permit me for just a minute. Yep. Newcastle West lost the first 2 games. They've won 4 in a row. By contrast, Bruff won the first 3 They've only won one of the last 3. I'm going for Newcastle West by 2 points.
Would you believe I had Newcastle down by 2? I'll go Newcastle by 1. Yeah, I saw Newcastle play for the first time against Stromnetlaca, and I was really, really impressed with them. And I said it to someone, and they were saying, "But sure, they lost their first 2 games." But again, a really well-rounded teams. I think the Premier Intermediate Championship has been won by the most rounded team, not by any individuals over the last 2 years. I think Newcastle have a really balanced side. And if our predictions were gone the same way in all the games, that would leave Effin, Drumnatlaca, Newcastle West as Blackrock as our final 4. But it's hard to envisage a final 4 without Bruff at the same time, Matt, considering the good start they made. But that is the cutthroat nature of the Premier Intermediate Championship.
But a health warning to Bruff. Glenroe had 7 points out of 8 out of the first 4 games last year and didn't make the semi-final.
Yeah, like the Premier Intermediate Championship is as cutthroat as you're going to get, Matt, because when you consider the 2021 final was Mungret St. Paul's versus Cappamore, and you look now, Cappamore, I think, are relegated unless it goes to some sort of points difference, and they have a huge win against Effin, which you can't really envisage. They'll be relegated intermediate, and Mungret will be in Group 1 of the Senior Hurling Champ next week and could be in a semi-final. It just goes, it can turn very, very quickly down there. Now, teams can rise to the ranks. We've seen, Effin are through now. They won intermediate a couple of years ago. Newcastle West won intermediate a few years ago. The PIHC are the same. Now they're out, but it can rise and fall very quickly, that grade. And it's one that it's brilliant to be in there as long as you can get out of it, because it does seem to come with a health warning down there. But that's our predictions for this week, Matt. We'll stay on the trend of hurling. We'll go from hurling to Camogie, because we have we are down to the semi-final stages in the Camogie Championships, Matt, with some intriguing games to be played this weekend. I'm fairly sure we have our semi-finals. Group 1, we had Newcastle topping the group with 4 wins from 4. Last year's runners-up, Killeedy, won 3 of the 4, losing that game to Newcastle to finish second. They also go into the semi-final. Then you were there in Granabel and Gary in the Senior B semi-finals. And in Group 2, Ahan topped the group, defending champions, with 3 wins from 3, straight into the semi-final. Bruff finished second with 2 wins from 3. They're going to play Newcastle, Ahan play Killeedy, and the PIHC are into the Senior B. Cappamore have been relegated. So that's the lowdown of that championship, Matt.
That's the lowdown of it, Jack. Cappamore have been relegated. They played Cricora last Sunday in what was a quarter-final relegation playoff. It was won by 4-8 to 5, or 1-5 by Cricora, who now go into the quarter-finals of the semi-finals of the B. But let's start with the semi-finals of the A. And there's one more. There are 2 mouth-watering games. But I suppose the big game of the day is champions Ahan, who will be taking on Killeedy in Ahan, I presume Mackey Park, and it's a repeat of last year's final. And like as you said when you outlined there in your piece, like these 2 teams have only lost 1 game between them, and that was Killeedy losing to Newcastle West. They both won 3 games because there was only 4 teams in Ahan's group, but Ahan won that 3 games so comprehensively, Jack. They look to be in very, very good form, and then having last year's runners up in their own patch, I think it's going to be a difficult job for Killeedy. But Killeedy have a great tradition, Jack, and they're going to make a fight of it. But it looks to me as if Ahan will get through on that one. Now the other A semi-final is between Newcastle West and Bruff, and it's on in Newcastle West. And Newcastle West are in very, very good form, Jack. 4 wins, 4 straight wins. You can't argue with it. Bruff lost to Ahan, but they got a couple of wins against the PIHC and Cappamore. A lot of current and Limerick senior camogie players will be paraded in this. And I suppose the big news from a Limerick point of view and from a Newcastle West point of view, and from will be that Rebecca DeLee has recovered and will be lining out for Newcastle West, and we're so glad to see Rebecca back. Was such a loss to both Newcastle West and to Limerick during the whole summer, and we wish Rebecca the best, because in terms of fending off injury, she's had enough of it now over the last couple of years. So we wish Rebecca the very best, and it's great that she's back doing what she loves in her leisure time, playing camogie and ladies football. So now the B semi-finals, Adair, who are after coming off of two successive promotions from junior in 2021 and intermediate in 2022, are motoring along very, very nicely, Jack. Very, very nicely. If you wanted to a blueprint for consolidation, they certainly have it. They got their 2 wins. They're into the B Championship. It'll give them time to further develop as a senior team. They're playing Crocora, who got in by the back door. They've already beaten them in the championship. Who got in by the back door, we'll say, in that they won the quarter-final relegation playoff. I hate using this backdoor term, but they got back in, and I fancy that they will. I fancy that Adair will get through on that one. Now, Jack, there's also the other semi-final. It features Na Piarsaigh and Granagh Ballingarry, Jack. And if you asked me 3 or 4 years ago that we'd be discussing the B Championship and that there'd be mention of Granagh Ballingarry in it, you'd be nearly arrested for going off your game. But that's what it is. Like, they are the fallen giants of Limerick camogie. So they have to travel to Na Piarsaigh to Cardavan on Sunday, and it's not going. All the games are on Sunday, Jack. It's not going to be easy for them. And there's a little sting in the tail now in the B Championship as well, Jack, because we've already said Cappamore have been relegated. But there are 2 teams being relegated this year. So the second team is going to be a playoff between the losers of the B semi-finals.
Yeah.
So that there will be 8 teams. There will be 8 teams in the senior championship next year, and I think the plan is also, there was only 6 teams in the intermediate championship this year, and I think the plan may be to have that up to 8 for the coming year. But speak of the intermediate championship, the 2 semi-finals are also on Sunday. You have Monaleen taking on Temple Lanton in Monaleen. And Monaleen, of course, were beaten finalists 2 years ago after a replay by Cappamore. And they were beaten finalists that year in 2021. They were beaten semi-finalists by Adair last year. So, they have been they're one of the fancied sides for the intermediate championship, as have Croke Kilfinny, who were runners-up last year. And they have a home semi-final on Sunday against Galbally. Now, Galbally, raised some eyebrows in the group stages so far, in that they beat Monaleen. And, Galbally aren't there by accident. I saw him winning the County Junior A title last year. I was hugely impressed by him. And, they're there on merit. And they're going to seriously ask questions of Croke Kilfinny. But I think Croke Kilfinny may just have the edge on that one. But it's a very, very exciting weekend of camogie, one to really look forward to, Jack.
Yeah, definitely an exciting weekend to look forward to.
Should I say that the Junior B plate, the Junior A Cup and plate are already decided, and but the Junior B Cup and plate semi-finals are on. So, it's a massive weekend of camogie. It's a super Sunday of camogie, because we have 10 semi-finals, which is which is phenomenal. Talk of the season coming to a climax, but by God, it's rapidly coming to a climax. But talk of a season coming to a climax, the ladies' football, or am I jumping the gun, Jack? Or were you coming to it?
I was just going to come to ladies' football. No, it's interesting because we obviously one of the semi-finals didn't get played, Monaghan versus Ula, and that'll be on this Friday. And also there was a draw in intermediate between 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 and Mungret St. Paul's. So we only have one finalist in the senior and intermediate. So I was going to say, do you want to go through it, or do you want to go through it in full next week when we know the finalists?
Well, no, I just want to bring viewers up to date, Jack, in that you're right. There was only one semi-final played. The Ula Monaghan fell foul of the weather, and Ballylanders travelled to Camogie and, excuse me, Jack, lost to St. Ailbe's. So Ailbe's are back in the final for a second year in a row. Now, in the intermediate championship, Kenny, who were runners-up last year, were surprisingly beaten by 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 in the semi-final. Now, you're right. 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 and Mungret St. Paul's drew 1-5 apiece at the end of normal time. But the referee deemed that the conditions were such that, it wasn't suitable to play the extra time. So that has to go to a replay. Now, the senior semi-final has been refixed for Friday evening at the North Campus in UL for 8 p.m. Now, as we speak, I haven't got a refixture. Just hold a second, Jack. I might have it.
For the semi-final, I have the semi-final here. For the intermediate,
I have it here.
4:30 on Saturday afternoon in UL. I'm 90% sure. Mungret versus.
Yeah, it has come in while we're on air. It's on Saturday at 4:30 in UL. You're absolutely correct. And of course, there will be a result on the day and all that sort of thing with that,
So we'll have our second senior finalist, our second intermediate finalist by 6 o'clock on Saturday evening, just in time for a day full of semi-finals on Sunday in the Camogie, and also the 2 quarterfinals in the senior, and also the last round in the intermediate. Now, I know there's plenty of junior action that we missed out on. There was intermediate rounds, but they're not finished with the weather causing havoc there. So Group 2 in the intermediate championship wasn't played. There was 2 games in Group A in the junior, and a game each then, I think, in the other 3 groups that weren't played. So we have 6 of the quarterfinalists in the junior. We have 2 semi-finalists intermediate and 2 quarterfinalists. We're missing 2 teams there. So we might get into that later down the line.
I think there's 2 junior A quarterfinals down for this weekend.
Oh, there actually is, because there's we know
Phoenix playing from Bradford, and is it Caherline and St. Patrick's?
No, Caherline are in Group 2, so they're waiting the Group A. It's Drum versus Fina. Drum versus Fina, and Mungret versus St. Pat's.
But Mungret versus St. Pat's. It's a City derby and a West derby. That's it. They're on this weekend. So the Junior A Championship will be down to 6 teams. Now, the Junior B Championships, just a quick recap, Jack, that they're progressing in the championships. Like we have, for instance, we have in the City, it has been decided because Monaleen have beaten Ballybrown. So the 2 of those will be going into the Junior B quarterfinals. In the East, 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 are in the final. South Liberties and Camogie was washed out last weekend, but it's on this weekend. In the West, Fiohanna and Granabellangary was a draw, so that's being replayed this Sunday. And there are 4 teams still standing in the South. You have Effin and Glenrue in one semi-final, and you have Camogie Rovers and Brewery in the other semi-final. So the Junior B Championship is progressing. In the Junior B football, there are 4 teams still in the South. You have Galway play Ballylanders, Brewery play 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴. In the East, it's down to the final. 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 versus Nacan. In the East, in the West, it's down to the semi-finals this weekend. I think your club are playing in the semi-finals, Jack. And in the City, it's still in the group stages, but it took a step forward last night when Clahan beat na PIHC 110-26. So that basically is the update of the various championships. Now, the intermediate championship, hurling championship, there was a couple of games washed out last weekend, which throws it a bit into disarray, but we will be able to address it more confidently next week.
Yeah, we've a lot of tidying up to next week, Matt, but there's an awful lot to look forward to over the next few days with all those games we've gone through. We've 80 minutes on the clock. I don't think there's anything else to go through before we finish, or is there? I think that's that was enough for this afternoon. Big thank you to James and Liam for coming on and start to discuss their new book, Keeping the Dream Alive, chronicling the 1973 All-Ireland final win for Limerick. For those younger people listening, it must be said that there was a long barren spell in Limerick. It isn't like it is at the moment. We'll take the moment and we can look back on the past fondly, especially with those memories of 1973. Loads of games on this weekend, Matt. Obviously the senior hurling championship games, the quarterfinals on Limerick JTV, probably the standouts, but we have semi-finals in Camogie, we've refixed games in ladies football, we've refixed games in the hurling championships. So loads to look forward to this weekend. You'll catch it on the website, all those games. Big thank you to James and Liam, as I said. Thank you to you, Matt, as always, for your contribution. People watching and commenting and telling us that they're watching. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube to get that algorithm going for us. On Facebook, make sure to like and share. On Twitter, like and retweet and all that good stuff. That's us, over and out, episode 252 in the books. Thank you, Matt, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Jack.
The impression again we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the 𝘕�㶿 today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes 𝘕𝘰𝘦𝘭𝘴 𝘔𝘬𝘬𝘠 leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high.
There's no sympathy